What if everything you had was taken away in a single day? Your home, your wealth, your family, even your health. Would your faith survive, or would it crumble beneath the weight of unimaginable loss? The story you are about to hear is one of the most powerful accounts in the Bible, a story of suffering, perseverance, and unwavering faith. It is the story of a man who lost everything the world could offer, yet never abandoned his trust in God. His name was Job. Long ago in the land of Uz, there lived a man unlike any other. Job was known throughout the region for his honesty, integrity, and deep reverence for God. The Bible describes him as blameless and upright, a man who feared God and turned away from evil. But Job's life was not only marked by righteousness, it was also marked by extraordinary blessing. He owned thousands of sheep, camels, oxen, and donkeys. His servants were many, and his household prospered. He was considered the greatest man among all the people of the East. More precious than his wealth was his family. Job had 7 sons and 3 daughters. Their home was filled with joy, laughter, and celebration. Whenever his children gathered for feasts, Job would rise early the next morning to offer sacrifices to God on their behalf. Job would pray, "Perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." To everyone who knew him, Job seemed to have the perfect life. But beyond the sight of mankind, something extraordinary was unfolding in heaven. One day the heavenly beings came before the Lord, and among them came Satan. The Lord asked, "Where have you come from?" Satan replied, "From roaming throughout the earth." Then the Lord said, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him." Satan challenged God, saying that Job was faithful only because he had been blessed. God replied, "Everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger." The greatest test of Job's faith had begun, and Job knew nothing about it. As the sun rose over the land of Uz, it seemed like an ordinary day. Job had no idea that the test spoken of in heaven had already begun. Without warning, a servant came running toward him, his clothes torn and his face filled with terror. "My Lord," he cried. The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby when the Sabaeans attacked. They stole the animals and killed the servants with the sword. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. Before Job could even process the terrible news, another servant arrived, breathless and trembling. Satan replied, "From roaming throughout the earth." Then the Lord said, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him." Satan challenged God, saying that Job was faithful only because he had been blessed. God replied, "Everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger." The greatest test of Job's faith had begun, and Job knew nothing about it. Fire from heaven fell upon the sheep and the shepherds, he said. They have all been consumed. I alone have escaped to tell you. Again, before the words had fully sunk in, a third messenger rushed in. The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties, he said. They swept down on your camels, carried them away, and killed the servants. I am the only one left alive. 3 devastating blows, one after another. Yet the greatest tragedy was still to come. As silence settled over the gathering, another messenger appeared. His voice shook with grief. Your sons and daughters were feasting together in the house of your eldest son. Suddenly, a mighty wind swept in from the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are all dead. In a single day, Job lost his wealth, his servants, and all 10 of his beloved children. The man who had everything now stood with nothing. Overwhelmed with sorrow, Job tore his robe and shaved his head, a sign of deep mourning. Then, instead of cursing God, he fell to the ground in worship. With tears in his eyes, Job declared, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." The Bible tells us that in all this, Job did not sin or accuse God of wrongdoing. His heart was broken. His world had collapsed, but his faith remained unshaken. Yet Satan was not finished. The hardest part of Job's trial was still to come. Although Job had lost everything he owned, he still refused to turn away from God. Once again, Satan appeared before the Lord. He argued that Job remained faithful only because his own life had been spared. "Skin for skin," Satan said. "Strike his body with suffering, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord answered, "Very well. He is in your hands, but you must spare his life." At once Satan struck Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Every movement became agony. Every breath reminded him of his suffering. The once respected man now sat alone among ashes outside the city, scraping his wounds with a broken piece of pottery. His wealth was gone. His children were gone. Now even his health had been taken from him. Seeing her husband's unbearable pain, Job's wife could no longer understand his faith. She looked at him and said, "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die." But Job gently replied, "You speak as one who lacks understanding. Shall we accept good from God and not accept adversity?" Even in the darkest moment of his life, Job refused to sin with his lips. His faith was wounded, but it was not broken. News of Job's suffering spread across the land. 3 of his friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, came to comfort him. But when they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. The pain had changed him so completely that they wept aloud. They tore their robes, sprinkled dust upon their heads, and sat beside Job on the ground. For 7 days and 7 nights they remained silent. No one spoke a single word because they saw that his suffering was too great for words. When Job finally broke the silence, he poured out the sorrow of his heart. He questioned why he had been born only to endure such pain. His friends believed that suffering was always the result of personal sin, urging him again and again to confess wrongdoing. But Job knew he had not lived a life of hidden wickedness. Though he struggled to understand God's purpose, he refused to abandon his faith. He cried out with honest questions, yet he continued to seek the God he trusted. Little did Job know, the answer he longed for was about to come not from his friends, but from God himself. After many long days of silence, sorrow, and unanswered questions, the moment finally came. The Lord answered Job out of a mighty whirlwind. But instead of explaining every reason for Job's suffering, God revealed something even greater, his infinite wisdom and unmatched power. The Lord asked, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you understand." He spoke of the seas, the stars, the dawn, the mountains, and the countless wonders of creation. One question after another reminded Job that God's wisdom reaches far beyond human understanding. Job realized that there were mysteries only God could fully comprehend. Humbled before the Creator of heaven and earth, Job bowed his head and said, "I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted." He confessed that he had spoken about things too wonderful for him to understand. Then, in reverence, Job repented not because he had committed the sins his friends accused him of, but because he recognized the greatness of God and the limits of human understanding. The Lord then turned to Job's friends. He declared that they had not spoken the truth about him, as Job had. God instructed them to offer sacrifices, and he told them that Job would pray for them. In an extraordinary act of grace, Job prayed for the very friends who had misunderstood and wrongly judged him. As Job prayed, the Lord restored his fortunes. Not only did God restore what Job had lost, he blessed him with twice as much as before. His flocks multiplied, his wealth increased, his family and friends returned to comfort him. In time, Job and his wife were blessed with 7 sons and 3 daughters once again. The Bible tells us that Job's daughters were among the most beautiful in the land, and they received an inheritance alongside their brothers. Job lived for many more years. He saw his children, his grandchildren, and even his great-grandchildren. After a long and full life, he died in peace. The story of Job is not simply about suffering. It is a story of faith that endures when life no longer makes sense. Job teaches us that trusting God does not mean we will never face pain. It means believing that God remains faithful even when we cannot see His plan. Sometimes the greatest victories are not won through strength or wealth, but through unwavering trust in God during life's darkest moments. If Job's story has encouraged you today, remember this: faith is not proven when everything is going well. Faith is proven when everything falls apart, and you still choose to trust the one who holds your future. Thank you for watching The Faith Chronicle. If this story inspired you, please like this video, subscribe to The Faith Chronicle, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful Bible story brought to life. Share this video with someone who needs encouragement today, and let the timeless truths of God's Word strengthen hearts around the world. Until next time, may God's peace be with you, and may His Word continue to light your path.